Welcome back to the podcast. I'm the host, Sean Boyce. I'd like to welcome my guest and friend to the show today, Chris Carr, who is the president and CEO of Farotech. Hello, Chris. How are you? And thanks for being on the show.
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff, man. Excited to dive into more about all things AI. But before we get there, if you don't mind, would you share with our audience a little bit more about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. I founded Farotech almost 22 years ago. We're a digital marketing agency located just outside the city of Philadelphia. We do comprehensive digital marketing, platinum partners with HubSpot. And one of our biggest claims to fame in the last 3 years has just been implementing AI technologies into our approach and helping companies innovate through cutting edge technologies. And so it's been exciting. It's been a crazy ride for the last 3 years. And I think you and I were talking before the show about the madness that's sort of going on. After 30 years of avoiding the classroom with every ounce of my being and soul, I got roped back in, and I just finished my Applied Generative AI Certification from MIT, which was difficult to say the least. A lot of homework, and I just hate school. I'll just leave it at that. I just hate it.
That's great. Yep. Gotta imagine you learned some interesting stuff.
You did. And I think you're rubbing shoulders with people that are help building the monster and also trying to make sure the alignment works. And it's very funny because I tell people, like, some of these people that are doing these things, like, you can't get a beer with these people. Like, they're nerd level midnight. If you can understand my,
Totally, man. Totally get it.
Yeah.
Super interesting. Very cool.
It's interesting and scary and crazy and wonderful.
Sure is, man.
Together. Yeah.
Wild world. It's got to be cool to be on the cutting edge, or like the bleeding edge of that, though, in terms of like what you're seeing. So excited to talk more about this topic because it coming up a lot. Obviously on my podcast, talk a lot about SaaS software. AI is right at the forefront of that. Obviously, a lot of people out there building AI tools, powered by AI tools, like all kinds of crazy stuff. You mentioned we're coming up on an important milestone, which is kind of the 1-year anniversary for ChatGPT. So, ever since then, it's been LLMs, this, that, and all kinds of different versions and people building wild stuff. So I'm curious to hear more from you in terms of, how deep you've been going in this world, getting the most out of these LLMs, what some of the applications and stuff like that have looked like. So we can kind of dive in wherever you want.
Yeah. I think the short answer with that for me is I've been using all of them, including the mobile tools. So ChatGPT is still nearest and dearest to my heart. The problem is that it's not up to date with, it's not connected to the internet. And so the training model, I think they moved it up a couple months, but still, I think it's at January of either 2021 or 2022. So hands down, the writing and some of the plugins like ADA, which is code interpreter, amazing. But I do find myself leaning on other tools. I don't like Google Bard, but it's the most up to date. Bing AI I would use more. It's just hard to find because I don't use Bing. You know what I mean?
Same.
And so I think the two winners of this race so far to me have been ChatGPT and Anthropic, Claude
Very
AI.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'm curious to hear more about your use cases. And I know we also want to talk a little bit about plugins because that's one of the things that OpenAI decided to do relatively early was that add plugin support, which I think opened up a whole world of possibilities, which is really interesting. And I was texting you recently about playing around with Web ChatGPT, and that has been a bit of a game changer for me as well, too. Kind of adds that extensibility. But talk to me more about what you've been doing with some of these tools and any of the extensibility that you've experienced as well.
Yep. Well, I mean, I think one of the first things that I did was it's not an extension, but it's something that Anthropic has that ChatGPT doesn't, and that is that it allows you to upload a file and sort of train your particular conversation on specific data. And so one of the things that we're always trying to fight against is hallucinations. And so what Claude allows you to do is it allows you upload a file, almost as many as 75,000 words. So that's essentially like a Harry Potter book. You know what I mean?
That's huge.
And so what I'll do to try to eliminate, what I usually do to try to eliminate hallucinations is I'll say, I will upload one document that has all of my buyer personas, all of my best-selling blogs, my case studies, certain reports, just everything that I can think of about my brand, my clients, my services, every single piece of information that I can into this super document. And then I'll upload it to Claude and I'll say, hey, when you go and you write this output, I want you to reference the statistics and the things in the super document rather than you coming up with your own version. Because when every time it comes up with its own version, sometimes it does right, but when it doesn't have the answer, it hallucinates, or essentially it makes things up. But when I say stay true to the document that I gave you, I get a better output that sounds like me and my brand. And so I've had a lot of success with that.
Very cool. I'm using these tools in a lot of those ways as well also. And I'm finding crazy, it's not just giving me operational efficiency improvements, but it's improving the quality of the output as well too, and changing the way that I work. I don't know if you've started to experience that as well too. I almost feel like I'm becoming very heavily reliant on these tools, but I'm almost getting like personal assistant, copywriter, someone to help me with strategy as well too. But it's really improved a lot about what I was doing.
So my number one improvement was it's a Chrome extension called TalkBerry, and TalkBerry is simply using Google Whisper. AI Whisper technology, and you just click a button, and then you just literally do a stream of consciousness. Like you talk and talk and talk, you endlessly talk, and then you press the stop button, and for some reason, it knows how to formulate everything you said into the most concise, transcript possible, or basically output possible. And then I can literally press the button again and say, hey, I didn't like in paragraph 3 how you said this, or put a title on paragraph 4, or things like that. And so what I've been able to do is like, it's almost like talking to like a transcriber, like back in the day, and they go and they take just my gobbledygook and turn it into something really, really good. And if I was to compare an output that way versus me doing it by hand, I don't think I could beat it at this point.
That's what I'm experiencing as well too, where I'm just getting to the point where I'm like, I really hope I don't have to go backwards.
I know.
At this point, I'm not sure whether or not I could.
Yeah.
If I did, the output would change dramatically. So
yeah. Let me show you this other experiment that I did. And now keep in mind, I'm gonna show my screen, but I photoshopped this for posterity, meaning it's not an exact result. And some of it is just a little bit of a stretch because ChatGPT isn't connected to the internet. But this technology is here now, and you'll get an understanding of what I'm talking about here. So one of the things that we have here is, can you see my screen?
I can. I see the menu items.
Yep. So what I'll do is this is ChatGPT, and I can go here and I can say, hey, I ate at a restaurant in Ambler called Deterra, and I ate something with shrimp in it. And essentially what it would do is it would say, okay, I looked at the menu and I found these 3 different items that have shrimp in it. And I'd say, oh, I had number 2. All right. And it would, give me 1 second. I had number 2. How many calories are in that? And essentially what it would do is it would look up an alternative version that has 680 calories. And then what I would say is, that's perfect. Now use my Instacart plugin, and these ingredients will be at my door in 3 hours. So,
really cool.
Yeah. And so what you're seeing here is just that we've always been able to communicate and buy products and services through Google. Then you have interruption marketing through the social media engines. But now you're seeing this whole other third lane that, in my opinion, Alexa sort of was that extra lane, but now it's really going to hit like a sledgehammer in the AI world. And so cool. You're going to be able to bypass the normal channels that we communicate about products and services. But it gets crazy because like I can be like, hey, I have $2,600 and I want to go to Chicago for 3 days. I need hotels and I need a hotel. I need a used car service. A taxi cab service. And I need a flight. And so it would find all that for me. And then I'd be like, yo, I never fly Spirit Airlines. So refigure that out, and it would do it. Yeah. So
cool. I mean,
crazy,
it's fast. The use cases are seemingly unlimited. It's only limited by your imagination. It's really getting there at that point.
Yep.
The chat, I think, is a really good point on your end, because people like it naturally gravitate in that direction anyway, like asynchronous communication, chat from a support perspective, people texting instead of calling, right? All that kind of stuff. People, the vast majority of people will use their phones for these days. It doesn't include actually calling anybody. People like prefer not to, honestly, at this point. So the chat communication has exploded, and now with it being so seamlessly integrated into that as an interface, whether you're using your computer, your laptop, your phone, whatever, the possibilities are really interesting, really exciting, and like changing the way people were searching to. It almost feels like the way that we used to use Google, or some still do, we still use it to an extent, but it feels like archaic. It feels like, you're banging like sticks and stones together.
Yep.
When you're actually using something like these chat interfaces with these AI tools, it's like it makes what you're doing more conversational, and then you can continue the thread. So like I'm sure you've got a bunch of like specific threads that you've been using with these AI tools. And then when you're ready to pick that conversation back up or do another version of it or instance of it or whatever, you just click on it and you just like pick right back up where you left off.
Now, what we're starting to see even from Bard is that you can have a thread and then you can make that thread public. So if I'm an influencer, I can literally say, this is a theory that I have. This is the research that I had. This is the questions that I asked. And here's a public link so you can continue the conversation on your own.
And that's like next level in terms of interaction. That's really
crazy,
cool.
Right?
Man, that's wild. Interesting stuff's coming, man. So question I have for you, right? You're experimenting with all these things similar to the way I am. I'm always looking for how to leveraging these tools. I've done it a couple of times this year, right? How do I leverage what AI is now capable of to do what I did before, but in a much more improved way, like faster, more efficiently, provide more value, whatever, push things forward in terms of building software, like leveraging AI as a component to something that you create, like an experience that you create. I'm curious to hear from your thoughts in terms of like, what strategies or recommendations would you use? Because a lot of our listeners are trying to figure out how to leverage these tools, like using them as a component to create an experience that provides value and can turn into a software business or a product or something like that. How would you be thinking about that, given what you know about what these tools can do now?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing that I would probably end up doing is it's more for internal use than front-facing use. And so what I recommend that you do is use a program like Advanced Data Analytics that's built into ChatGPT. You're going to have a lot of this functionality is going to be built into Microsoft 365 and with Duet. It's just not there yet. But essentially what they allow you to do is they allow you to upload large data files. And when you upload large data files, it basically dissects the data and you can ask it questions in natural language processing. So you can start to talk to your data specifically. And so it gets really, really cool because a lot of times every software product that we use has an export button. You know what I mean? A lot of them do at least. And so when you export that, now you have functionality that you never had before to basically talk about it in a very specific way. But let me share my screen one more time and then I'll show you kind of how it can be used to the next level. So I'm a marketing agency and we have, about 26 clients that roughly spend about $10,000 a month on marketing service with us. And what I do is that sometimes I'll notice an anomaly. I'll be looking at one of my clients and I'll be like, hey, you know what? I'm noticing that these keywords aren't ranking for this smaller healthcare client. Is that also affecting larger ones? Is it only affecting websites that have been built in the last 2 years? What you're seeing here is I'm not just asking it about one account. I'm asking it about, are these anomalies happening on any of my other accounts? Right? I can continue to go. Is it affecting only the clients that have HubSpot? Is it affecting highly competitive keywords too? What about the account, my project managers? Is it certain project managers that aren't getting the same results?
Very cool.
So what I'm doing here is to do this before, I'd have to gather all my project managers, account managers all in the same room. And I'm like, hey, export all your reports. And then tell me, are you seeing these anomalies and stuff like that? And it's just a colossal time waste. And so what I'm looking to do is use ADA to have a whole lot more transparency into the data in my company without bothering my entire team.
Super interesting. Love it. It's just like, it's amazing the kind of value you can get out of figuring out how to leverage these tools, like you said. And that's a good start to really like thinking about how to leverage them in order to solve your own problem. If that becomes a workflow you become heavily reliant on, chances are that's going to provide value to other people who are in the target market, essentially, that you are in. So that's a great way to be thinking about it, right? Same type of strategy as before, but now you're like more than capable of producing something that's pretty tremendously valuable like that. So that's really interesting.
I'm finding just one more thing here. I'm going to share my screen one more time. And this is where I find someone like you are going to be in pole position to do this next thing. So what I believe is going to happen with companies is you're going to look at all of your software programs and you're going to look at what's the most value I can get out of the APIs at each of these software programs. And then from there, what I'm looking to do is develop what's called like a centralized AI copilot. And the AI copilot is going to get information to and from these software programs. And what you can do at the high level is that you have complete transparency about the health of your business. And you can start to look at your inventory system and start to say, well, if we're low in this inventory, what would happen if we increased our prices by maybe $5 per unit? And then how does that affect everything from payroll to HR to marketing to, my ERP, and so on and so forth. And so what's going to happen here is that your legacy systems, if they have a decent API is going to stand in the middle, and it's going to be this kind of communication pilot that essentially we're saving so much time.
Totally. I mean, it feels like really the objective, maybe the bottleneck here is how quickly can you get essentially all of your data into a tool like this so that you can start extracting business intelligence, information, logic out of it, like valuable information that can inform your decision making to improve it. That seems like kind of races on there, which is super interesting.
It is.
Random question I just thought about too is like, I can't really shake myself from building AI related products at the moment. And I have ideas for days, right? Like doing discovery, finding problems we're solving. If I had a full team of developers, I could keep them running 24/7 with just building cool software at the moment. There's that much opportunity out here because of what these tools can do. My question for you is, I've almost been like thinking, all right, I need to take a break from building AI tools because it's been basically nonstop ever since things started. But the question I'm kind of getting at is like, is that almost the wrong approach? I'm almost wondering, based on these visuals you're showing, like I'm wondering if any software realistically that's going to be valuable and extensible and going to continue to provide value into the future as these tools evolve. Is there really going to be any software that's not going to have at least a component of AI moving forward from here?
I think that, to tell you the truth, so the thing that I do right now is about 15 times a month, I go to businesses and I lecture them on the state of AI. And at the end, they basically say, well, what do I do now? And I say, create your own internal AI team of these are people in your business who want to know about AI. Make sure that you're using AI in your marketing because that's the lowest hanging fruit right now. And I go through a bunch of them. And then the first thing I say is, then I want you to go to all of your vendors and all your software and ask them a very hard question. What AI technologies are you building into your software? And if they can't give you a good answer, get a new one that will, because any software program that's using AI is like using rocket fuel. And so you're not looking for a faster horse, you're looking for a rocket, And so for you, I wouldn't shy away from AI because it's just slower.
Totally. It's like sticks and stones argument for the most part. It's going to continue to be near impossible to really keep up. And it's starting to feel much less like optional versus a requirement. I just thought about like all the tools out there that were working on building some type of a model that was maybe proprietary at the time when ChatGPT came out. And that just blew the doors off of anything that anybody was working on at the moment. And all of a sudden, tools that can be spun up in a weekend are more capable than stuff people have been working on for years. Just like it's an exciting time because it's like a really thrust forward, like momentum and progress. Like we get those every now and then. Like the internet was another example of that. And as these technologies evolve, it's pretty wild to kind of ride that wave. So it's cool to be at the forefront of one, like while we're in industry, watching it continue to be actively developed. I wanted to talk to you, pick your brain more about your one of your specialties in terms of areas of expertise as well too, and that being like marketing and advertising, and how these AI tools can be leveraged to make progress there as well too, because that's another key part of, even if we're building software and includes AI, whatever, it's like, well, we still need people to find it. We still need to be able to tell stories about it. All of that type of stuff is really important. So we spent a lot of time like focusing on the growth element, and I spent a lot of time trying to slow people down from building and trying to encourage them to sell it, start telling stories about it, start doing the research about it beforehand. But that is a continuous battle. So I know you've already showed a couple of great examples of how you're leveraging these tools in those ways. Curious to pick your brain about like, what's the advice you have for people specifically with regard to those use cases or make an impact in those areas with regard to what these AI tools can do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Let me kind of show you something here. This deals more with the multimedia side. when you're talking about marketing advertising, the things that I assume that you've already done is that you've gone through ChatGPT and Bard and these other large language models, and you want to make sure that you've implemented them into your approach, into your productivity, and maybe even into your products and services. We already talked about talking to your data through advanced data analytics that's built into Code Interpreter. There's other programs as well. But I want to do now is peer around the corner and talk to you a little bit about kind of the sneaky thing that's kind of going on with generative art. When you have generative art and you start to think of Midjourney or, start to think about Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and even now DALL-E 3. All right. Let me kind of show you this thing that I believe is coming around the corner. And very few people are talking about this. The idea is what we call hyper-personalization. And so to do that, I want to kind of show you this picture here. This is my business partner, Todd. And one thing I know about Todd is that he loves golf. Okay. And so when you think of generative art, you got to know that Todd also buys from businesses that he knows, that he likes, and that he trusts. All right. So who does Todd know, like, and trust more than anybody else? Himself. All right. So we have to start to think of these tools as not just a platform where you can create pretty little unicorns, but instead, this is what I believe the future of these tools are going to be. That we know that Todd loves golf. And so what I believe is going to happen is hyper-personalized ads. So as you can see, that's Todd on the left. And then this ad was made with generative art on the right. It knows he loves golf. It's connected to his social media. So he knows he likes blue. He knows a number of different things. But like literally, if you're an African-American woman who loves her kids, the next time you buy the MacBook Pro, you're going to be surprised to see that the ads look eerily like you and your loved ones. So it's awesome. Sort of like a world of hyper-personalization that's what I believe is coming down the line. And so what you need to know therefore is you need to know what are the tools and the technologies that I can do that are going to know the demographics and the information about my potential client. So if I'm going to get the right message to the right client at the right time, now I'm doing it in the most hyper-personalized way. So if I'm using old techniques that doesn't know my client inside and out, when this wave of AI hits, you might not be ready for it.
Super interesting. That's fascinating. The hyper-personalization is next level, right? Talk about that all the time, and a bunch of use cases like cold outreach and whatnot. Anybody who's still spamming people on whatever these platforms and sending generic messages, that is essentially dead in terms of just not working whatsoever. And the response is always, you got to go personal. Like you got to hyper-personalize things. I think it's a really interesting use case because these AI tools should be able to do that almost seemingly on the fly. Right? If they can get that data input, they can create almost a custom experience that should feel very customized to you, unlike anything anybody could ever like write or script. You know what I mean? Super interesting.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
And the speed from which it's coming, we just don't know. I would believe that doing this in bulk and scale, I don't believe that the chips are firing on all cylinders to do that right now, but we know it's early days. And when you think about the compression of these things, there used to be a show called Silicon Valley. You ever heard of that show?
I'm watching it right now. Yeah, I'd make a post on LinkedIn about it.
That's so funny. Well, in Silicon Valley, they are trying to make a name for themselves for compression software. And only the nerds would know that what they were trying to achieve was very, very difficult because you're taking a very large file and making it extremely small. And so to have the point of the TV show, they had to make whatever they were compressing it to really, really small. And so everybody in the show sort of just overlooked it and thought compression. Well, this fictitious number of, like the size that they were trying to compress to, Stability AI is 50,000 times stronger than that fictitious file size that they were aiming for in the show.
It's crazy. Wild stuff, right? Man.
So what does that mean? You're talking about bigger, stronger, faster, but smaller, stronger, and now. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy.
Here already. Man, that's wild. It's there's a lot going on, long story short. So I have one more question for you, and then I want to talk more about it. You've been experimenting with YouTube AI. I want to hear more about that as well, too. Got a sneak peek, but I want everybody else to hear more about it as well. And that's how do you prevent yourself from like becoming overwhelmed here? There's a lot like the subreddit singularity. There's talk about this kind of stuff, right? Where it's like, I'm going to be so obsolete. So there's a lot of worry. Like, how do you keep people from like, how do you manage it in terms of like all the crazy new stuff that's like flying at you so fast? Like, any advice there?
Yeah, well, for me, it's my strategic advantage because I talk about AI. And so my job is to basically do the research so you don't have to do it. So in an ADD world like I'm in, this is music to my ears. But to the average person, there's only certain things that you can do. And then you have to start to make choices and you have to decide certain things. But let me show you one other screen that I think that explains a lot of where I believe you can have some hope. We have always, as a marketing company, said, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we do some really amazing, cool stuff. And they're like, oh, that's cool. Let's do it. And then I look at their current model and I'm like, actually, you're not even doing foundational things. From a marketing perspective, you're not on the first page of Google. You have no social presence. Your blogs aren't effective, and you're not even making data-driven decisions. All right. But here's the thing is that if AI allows us to do those foundational things a whole lot stronger and quicker, now I have the ability to do those superpower things that we never got around to doing. And so what I believe is going to happen in the future is that we will all be top graded. What I mean by that is that, we're going to be able to get to those things that are our next level things. And I think that any subject matter expert like you and me, if budget and time and all of these barriers weren't there, we would already be doing more aggressive things than we're doing right now. But we're almost always starting on the ground floor, or at least in the basement. And I think it's going to be fun for people like you and me to really flex a little bit because we actually probably couldn't before, Yeah,
it's a great point, actually. So it makes what wasn't possible before, it was like theoretically possible, but not probable. You can make a lot of that probable now, which is really exciting because you start to see a lot more progress with seemingly like less effort, less investment on a lighter lift. That's really interesting. I like that perspective.
Yep.
Very cool. Let's talk more about the YouTube AI experimentation that you've been doing. There's some pretty cool stuff going on there.
Sure. So one of the things that YouTube has been doing, and HeyGen Technologies is also doing it as well, is they are partnering with a company called 11 Labs. What 11 Labs does, I think you've probably seen these funny and scary videos online, where they will literally take a sound clip of you talking for 30 seconds or 60 seconds. And then they will basically be able to take your voice and basically make any transcription sound exactly like you, the way you talk, your your speech, all that stuff, right? Well, now what you're able to do, YouTube will be able to do this by the end of the year, and HeyGen's already doing it now. And what you're able to do is you're able to literally upload a video, and then you can transcribe it into multiple languages. But what's interesting is that when you speak in multiple languages, people that speak in French or Mandarin, they don't make the same facial expressions or the same gestures that an American does. And so what the AI does is it changes my eyes, it changes my mouth, and it changes my gestures to match the culture of the voice that people are hearing. And so what I'm going to do now is show you a video of the experiment that I ran.
Very cool.
I'll send that to you in post-production so you don't have to sit through it. So you remember it, right? It did it.
Yeah, I do. It's awesome. I'll have it spliced in here. Let me take a note of the timestamp.
Yeah.
Right, cool.
Yep.
Awesome. I'll just pick it back up and then.
Yep. So you'll have seen it. You'll have seen it, and then you'll be kind of like, wow, or something like that. Okay. So.
Yep. I'll do reaction, and then I'll probably just go right into more information about your business, who should reach out to you, that kind of stuff. Anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
Well, I think that maybe you and I should talk a little bit about international business, the impact of that
international business.
Yep.
That's a good one. All right, cool. Let's talk about that first. Reaction, international business, and then we'll do wrap up stuff. Oh,
yep.
Awesome. Damn, that is wild. You said that to me before, and seeing it again, it's equally as impressive. The facial expressions, the mannerisms. So I don't know if we talked about this, but I've experimented or playing around with learning languages myself. And every day I put more effort into that, it starts to feel more and more like it's going to be obsolete sooner rather than later. But I have noticed that like the accents, the mannerisms, all that kind of stuff is different. And it's amazing how well that video looks now. That's pretty wild to me. Did that surprise you when you first saw it, or what was your reaction to it?
Well, I think that in our industry, I think you were probably using, I think the technology was called like Descript or whatever that was. It's like it's one of those platforming engines that you could delete the ums out and it would, you know what I mean? It would auto dub and stuff like that. So you could see the stepping stones. But to go into other languages like that is just, it's going to be a marvel. And I think it's going to make the world a lot smaller in a good way. Just international business. I was looking at a piece of technology, a thought leader in the space, and that was talking about how Zoom will probably just be in like a 2-second delay. So I could be speaking to someone in China, and I would talk to him in English. He would hear it in Mandarin. He would reply in Mandarin, and I would hear it in English, and then so on and so forth. So just the conversation is just 1% slower, but all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Like,
it's amazing.
Just think about that, right?
Possibilities are just like ridiculous because there's so many people or businesses or whatever that can more than likely like need each other's help or services. But at the moment, if there's a communication barrier, just like probably largely impractical, borderline not possible. This could change all of that.
Or you exclusively sell in the United States, not because you didn't want to, but because you're like, how do I handle customer service? It's like, well, now I can hit pretty much the whole world's my oyster. So my total addressable market just 100x'd.
Seriously, increased dramatically. I definitely think about it from the perspective of like the podcast that we run, like this episode here. This could be, others that speaking and can understand English across the world could listen to the previous ones or could listen up to this point. But now everyone can understand it in whatever it is, whatever first language they speak or whatever language they're fluent in, which I mean, the access is just like, it's crazy. It changes everything.
Spotify is already leading the charge on that. They're saying that your podcast will be in multiple languages. I probably think even maybe by the beginning of Q1.
It's wild, man. That's the other element about how this, in terms of technologically, what's happening with all these AI tools and products is the speed at which it's developing. Like, I feel like it came out of the gate strong, but it's almost been increasing exponentially from there, which has been fascinating as people are coming up with all these different types of use cases and like applications of the technology.
I think we're in generation 2 right now. In other words, it was foundational for about a year. We learned what it is. People adopted to their software. And what you're noticing now is really, really soft betas that barely even work, but they get out there first. Like Bard is barely good. Duet is not even what they promised. Copilot, Live 365 isn't what they promised. But the need for speed is so critical that it's like, hey, we'll slap beta on it and we'll still get the credit for being innovative, knowing that everyone knows it's early days. And so this bizarre thing of like, it doesn't have to be perfect to launch anymore. It has to be innovative and go, and we'll improve it over time.
That's what's really interesting. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you, Chris, for being here, sharing all these updates, man. I'm gathering the fact that we need to do these more regularly because of how quickly everything's moving here. So we'll make that a point next time as well also. But before I let you go or we wrap up, I'd love to hear more about, for those of our listeners, anybody who's tuned into the content, who should be thinking about reaching out to you? How can they get in touch? Provide some of that information too, please, if you don't mind.
Sure. You can go to farotech.com. That's farotech.com. I'm assuming it'll be in the show notes, and info at farotech.com. But one of the things that I would kind of leave you with is that I offer a free, we call it AI Today, which is the state of AI, where it's at, where it's going, and how you can be prepared. And there's no heavy sales approach at the end. It's not a trick. It's not a gimmick. It's a little bit of just us kind of sharing what we know. And it's a little bit of a message of mercy, because I'm finding that there's so many businesses that are woefully underprepared for this asteroid that's going to be hit Earth in the form of AI. So, yeah.
So thank you, Chris, for that offer. I appreciate that. And anybody who's listening and wants to know more, I highly encourage it. Chris and I have known each other for quite a while. Super helpful, super valuable, and very knowledgeable, of course, obviously, as well. Awesome. I really appreciate you being here, Chris.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Product Launch. I hope you got value out of it. I like to feature product people on my podcast because that's who I love to help. I'm a product strategist, and I can help you scale your business, and grow your profit through a product. If you'd like to learn more about how I can help you, email me at sean@nextstep.io. That's Sean, SEAN, at nextstep.io. Or visit my website at nextstep.io. That's nxtstep.io.